Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a topic that I've personally always found fascinating, especially as it underpins so much of the cryptocurrency world.
Hmm.
The fundamental differences between ASICs and GPUs.
Right.
Think of this as your entry point maybe into Hardware 101 for crypto. We want to give you a clear picture without, getting bogged down in super technical stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. Whether you're just prepping for a conversation, maybe trying to wrap your head around blockchain tech, or honestly, if you're just curious about what actually powers crypto mining, you're definitely in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
Our source for this exploration today is Crypto Mining Rig 101, the definitive guide for 2025 from WoolyPooly. And we're really going to zero in on what makes ASICs and GPUs different, specifically for mining.
Okay, so our aim is pretty straightforward then. Let's explain, in plain terms, what GPUs and ASICs are, how they work in mining, the good and bad of each.
The strengths and weaknesses, yeah.
Right. And crucially, why you, the listener, should care about this distinction if you're trying to get a handle on this technology. Okay, let's kick off with GPUs. What exactly are they?
So GPUs, graphics processing units, they were originally made for, graphics, rendering images for video games, computer displays, that sort of thing.
Your graphics card in your PC, essentially.
Exactly that.
No.
Making things look good on screen. That's its day job, originally.
Right. But here's where it gets interesting for our topic. These things turned out to be surprisingly good at crypto mining. The WoolyPooly guide mentions their parallel processing capabilities. Can you maybe break that down a bit?
Sure. Imagine you've got a massive jigsaw puzzle. A normal computer processor, a CPU, it's like one person trying to find each piece, one by one.
Okay, slow going.
Yeah. A GPU, though, with this parallel processing, it's like having hundreds, maybe thousands of little helpers. Each one looks at a small part of the puzzle, trying to fit pieces simultaneously.
Ah, okay. Many hands make light work.
Kinda, yeah. In crypto mining, you're doing tons of similar sort of independent math problems over and over. GPUs are great at this because their structure lets them tackle many calculations at the same time. A CPU does them sequentially, one after the other.
That makes a lot more sense now. So GPUs weren't meant for mining, but their design just happened to be really useful for it. What are the advantages, then, of using GPUs for mining?
Well, a big one is versatility. Because they weren't built for just one super specific thing, you can adapt them. They can mine different cryptocurrencies by switching the mining algorithm.
Algorithms, like the different math rules each coin uses.
Exactly. Think of it as different sets of instructions for verifying transactions and making new coins. A GPU can often learn different sets.
So it's like a multi-tool for different crypto jobs. The guide also mentions they hold their value pretty well.
That's another key point.
Yeah.
Because GPUs are still really needed for gaming, video editing, AI stuff.
Okay.
There's a strong second-hand market.
Right. Gamers always want the latest cards, or even older ones.
Exactly. So they tend to keep their value better than, say, specialized mining hardware that becomes obsolete. Plus, if you build a rig, with several GPUs, if one card fails or gets old, you can usually just swap that one card out. Gives you some flexibility.
Okay, so adaptability, resale value.
Yeah.
Those are solid pros. What about the downsides, the drawbacks for mining?
The main ones highlighted are power consumption. They can be quite power hungry, and the heat they generate.
Yeah.
All that parallel work uses a lot of electricity, and a side effect of using electricity is heat. Lots of it.
Which means you need serious cooling, right? Big fans, maybe water cooling.
Definitely. You need good power supplies and really effective cooling systems, often quite expensive ones. That adds to the cost and complexity of running a GPU mining setup.
Got it. Power and heat management. Okay, let's flip over to the other side then. ASICs. What's the story there?
ASICs stands for Application-Specific Integrated Circuits. And the key is right there in the name, application-specific.
Built for one job.
Exactly. These are custom-designed chips built from the silicon up for one very specific task. In crypto, that usually means being hyper-optimized for the mining algorithm of one particular cryptocurrency. Just one.
So completely different from a GPU, which is more like a generalist that found a side hustle in mining.
Yeah.
An ASIC is a specialist from day one. The guide had a good analogy for this, I remember.
They did, yeah. It compared a GPU to like a Swiss Army knife, useful for lots of things, but maybe not the absolute best at any single one.
Okay.
An ASIC is like a highly specialized wrench designed only to turn one specific size and type of bolt. It'll do that one job incredibly fast and efficiently.
Much better than the pliers on the Swiss Army knife.
Way better. But it's completely useless for anything else. That's an ASIC.
So what's the appeal then? Why use something so inflexible for mining?
Efficiency. Pure, raw efficiency. Because they are laser-focused on that single mining algorithm, ASICs achieve a much, much higher hash rate.
Hash rate, that's the calculation speed, right?
Correct. The number of calculations per second, they get a vastly superior hash rate for the amount of power they consume compared to a GPU doing the same algorithm. The guide calls it unparalleled hashing power.
Okay.
And they also tend to be more compact, physically smaller than a GPU setup that might offer similar raw power.
High efficiency, smaller footprint. Sounds great.
Yeah.
But there must be downsides to being that specialized.
Oh, absolutely. The biggest one is that lack of versatility. An ASIC is tied to one algorithm. If the coin changes its algorithm, which happens.
Resist ASICs sometimes.
Exactly. Sometimes developers do that. Or if another coin just becomes way more profitable to mine, that ASIC you own, it basically becomes a very expensive doorstop.
Ouch. Okay.
They can also be incredibly noisy. Those high-powered fans needed to cool them down, make a real racket. And like we hinted at, their resale value is usually terrible.
Because they get outdated so fast.
Precisely. Newer, faster, more efficient ASICs are constantly being developed. So older models quickly become unprofitable and lose almost all their value. It creates this sort of arms race for the latest hardware, especially with major coins like Bitcoin.
Right, which can centralize mining power with those who can afford the constant upgrades. That's kind of counter to the original idea of some cryptos, isn't it?
It's definitely a factor worth considering, yeah. It touches on the whole decentralization aspect.
Okay, so we have the adaptable jack-of-all-trades GPU and the hyper-specialized, super-efficient ASIC. Let's just quickly summarize those key differences again.
Sure, so purpose. GPUs are for graphics, repurposed for mining. ASICs are built only for mining a specific algorithm.
Flexibility.
GPUs are flexible, can mine different coins, have other uses. ASICs are totally inflexible, one coin, one algorithm.
And efficiency.
For their specific target, ASICs are way, way more efficient, more hashes per watt of electricity.
Got it. And the cost. It's not just buying the hardware, right? The guide kind of implies this. Running costs are huge.
Absolutely crucial point. Both need significant investment up front, but the ongoing costs, especially electricity for power and cooling, differ a lot and are a major factor in profitability. You really have to calculate that.
Which brings us back to hash rate and efficiency. You need both metrics.
Exactly. Hash rate is how fast it calculates. Efficiency is how much power it uses to calculate that fast. ASICs win massively on efficiency for their specific job.
So we've laid it all out, but for someone listening, maybe new to this, why does this difference, ASICs versus GPUs, actually matter? Why should they care?
Well, if you want to understand the crypto mining landscape at all, this trade-off versatility versus efficiency is kind of the core concept for the hardware side.
It explains why some coins are mined differently.
Right. And it really highlights how fast technology moves in crypto. Specialized hardware can just leapfrog general purpose stuff for specific tasks. And, it also gives you context for those big discussions about crypto's environmental impact. Hardware efficiency is a massive part of that energy consumption equation.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's try and wrap this up then. What's the main takeaway from our deep dive today?
I'd say the fundamental takeaway is GPUs give you flexibility. You can switch coins, potentially resell the hardware easier, but they're generally less efficient for any one specific mining task.
And ASICs.
ASICs give you incredible efficiency, just unmatched power for their single target algorithm. But that comes at the cost of zero versatility, and they become outdated fast. It's a major trade-off.
Hopefully this conversation has cleared things up a bit on these basic hardware ideas in crypto mining, especially if you're new to it all.
Yeah, definitely hope so. And maybe as a final thought, think about where else you see this specialization versus versatility trade-off. It happens in lots of areas of technology, right?
That's a good point, like specialized tools versus a multi-tool.
Exactly. Does thinking about it that way spark any other questions for you about where computing hardware is going or how crypto mining might evolve next? It's a field that changes constantly, and getting these basics down is really your first step to keeping up.